Hey everyone, it's April 21st. That is a Tuesday. Hope everyone's doing all right. I'm doing fine. I got to go back to work a little bit last week, a couple days. Had some paperwork piling up on my desk, and my boss wanted me to come take care of it, so I did that. I got to catch up with some old coworkers. That's really nice because the casino I work at still has a very bare minimum staff, which I guess actually below minimum staff. It's mostly just to make sure that the servers are intact and that the building itself is intact and that looters don't come in and try to steal things. So there's security there, surveillance. There's one manager. There's the director of IT, and there's the director of engineering there. Other than that, it's pretty low, bare bones staffing there. But I got to catch up with them because the director of IT and the director of engineering are both my friends. I got to talk to them about some gaming, photography, Final Fantasy VII, of course, because I can't not talk about that. So it was nice to get out of the house and catch up with some of my old coworkers. Yeah, it felt weird talking to them, honestly, because I haven't spoken to them in so long. It was weird being in the office too. I was there by myself, which was actually kind of nice. I actually really enjoy being by myself in the office because I get to listen to anything I want. I get to just kind of work at my own pace, and it was really nice. I know it was for a different reason this time, and that kind of set on me. But other than that, it was nice to get out of the house, and I'm happy that I still have a job there. So that's been what's been going on with me. I'm still doing the podcast, of course, and this one is going to be with Jack Verttex of University of Colorado Boulder. He also works as a community coordinator at Tespa. So we get into a lot of things. The last three guests I have on this podcast for this season are going to be really insightful. They're going to be very, I would say that they're going to be more ingrained in the fabric of collegiate esports today than some of my previous guests, which, don't get me wrong, I learned a lot from all of my guests. That's why I have them on, because I like to learn. I like to know things. Obviously, the tour I had on last week, he educated me all things Valve and Dota. I love getting all these insights from people in areas of collegiate that I'm not, because I'm not immune to ignorance. So try to cure that. But the next three, I feel like, are going to be a little bit more ingrained in the fabric of what collegiate esports is. Jack is going to be starting out with that because Boulder has one of the largest student-run esports organizations in the United States, maybe even North America. They're very huge. They're in a lot of different tournaments throughout the United States, throughout North America, and you can see just how passionate that group over there is. And Jack, he is one of the founders of it. Actually, he may have been the founder of it, but he does. He does have his hand quite a bit in that because he helped start it. So, not to mention he's also from Tespa, and that's a area of collegiate that I'm not fully familiar with because obviously I used to work with a lot of collegiate League of Legends, and Tespa is Blizzard, as Heroes of the Storm at one time, not really anymore, but Overwatch and Hearthstone primarily. So it was really nice to get to talk to him about that one. And my next two guests after that will be insightful for Collegiate League of Legends specifically, and I'll get to that on the outro of this podcast. So we have to get there first. So let's go and listen to what Jack says, everything of that. It was a really good conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Here it is. How's it been over in Boulder?
It's been okay. I actually decided to go north because of this recent epidemic. My parents live up north in Fort Collins, and so I've been staying with them over the past few weeks.
Is this just temporary until the pandemic ends?
That's the hope, yeah. I would like to go back to Boulder, and as classes start back up in the fall and such, but who knows? Nobody knows at this point.
Yeah, no, it's all kind of up in the air. I think as I was speaking, or as I was prepping for this, I think the 30 days of no touch or social distancing, I think is a technical term. I think that actually got extended by the government. So yeah. I would like for it to end soon because my job's only gonna pay me for so long while I'm off of work. But yeah. Other than that, it is having quite an effect on everything, obviously. But I'm gonna try. Obviously, a lot of the podcasts lately have been focusing on that, and of course we can talk about it. I've been trying to keep it a more positive note on it though, because I don't feel like a lot of people are seeing too much of a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think it's important to know that there is one, even though it might be far off, it might be like a dim glimmer right now. It is still there. So yeah, at the end, yeah, I hope you I definitely hope you go back too. You're a director of partnerships at Boulder.
Yeah, so as I started taking on more responsibilities outside of the club at the University of Colorado, I kind of transitioned from being president to being the director of partnerships, allowing me to focus on other things while continuing to have a hand in the development of the community and the esports teams.
Are there many? And I don't know if this would be anything you would know, but are there many colleges that have a sole director partnerships for their esports club or college? Because from what I understand, a lot of the partnerships are gained through just the networking of the president or any other members. I haven't actually got. You're the first person I got to actually talk to that is specifically director of partnerships.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at some of the organizations, there's usually somebody who's handling outreach or handling business ops, which I think would fall under the responsibilities that I do now. Um, but the structure that we set up when it came to our director board is pretty unique. We did take some notes from the University of Utah, their Crimson Gaming Club, as well as Rutgers, but I believe that I that I really like how our director board is set up, and I think that the director of partnerships role that I now fulfill allows one person in the organization to purely focus on getting as much support as possible for the organization, which I think is something that a lot of clubs struggle with because they have one person who's doing everything on top of trying to, send out sponsorship decks and things like that.
Right, that's what I've noticed. Is that yeah, a lot of them are taxed, and I don't know if that's because of the structure. Well, obviously, a lot of it's because of the infrastructure. But what kind of resources does Boulder have? Because actually, I do want to get into a lot about Boulder because as far as I've known them being an esports club and being one of the more, I guess, prominent ones that's from my understanding was student started and student ran, but since I've known about it, your name has always been there. We haven't actually crossed paths too much. We've talked here and there, but I think this is actually the first time we've got to sit down and just chat. So I'm going to take this opportunity to learn a lot about you and Boulder because I don't know how all that came about as far as Boulder is concerned. Were you there from the very beginning, and did you help establish everything? Like, I know you just talked about you establishing the the director board, and all that. But were you there from the very beginning, establishing the club in the first place?
Yeah, when I got to Boulder, there was a very small community of Counter Strike players, who were participating in C Star, and a few other online leagues. And they were a Tespa chapter at the time, but weren't really taking advantage of the resources available to them. And when I got there, I kind of realized that there wasn't a home for these gamers on campus. There wasn't a community for these people to connect. And it was something that I was really looking for. So I went to that group and I said, hey, do you think we could scale this up? And over the course of the next 3 to 4 years, we went from around 20 people to now, I believe the Discord server's sitting at around 2,000, 2,100 people. um, and that includes, it really started with starting with events, trying to hold events that were bringing students together, which I think is something that a lot of these student clubs start off with is, hey, we just want to hold some fun events, whether it's Smash or board games or movie nights, things like that. And then creating a solid foundation for esports development at the campus. And so I believe now we're at 14 or 15 competitive teams, that are competing in all sorts of games, as well as having general managers, coaches, analysts, to support them. And then throughout the past couple of years, it's really just been thinking a lot about foundation, thinking a lot about transition, and creating something that lasts. I was just at the intercollegiate game night last night, which was the kind of coronavirus inspired panels and discussions around collegiate esports. And one of the big things that was talked about, during that night, was the fact that a lot of these clubs, when somebody graduates, the club dies, or it is a fraction of what it used to be. And I think that I've put so much work into the organization that I really wanted to ensure uh, that it lasted, that it continued to be something that not only the students found valuable, but also the university. And so that meant over the past few years, creating a structure that allowed us to, transition directors in and out, transition staff, onboard staff, offboard staff, and uh, really valuing those staff members and making sure that they enjoy their time. And then also bringing the organization to the university and saying, hey, look at this thing that we made. It's really important to so many people, and we would love for you to support it.
Yeah,
Um,
I was actually wondering about Boulder's perception, the college of the esports club. Have they shown a positive reception to it? Have they even talk about scholarships or anything of the sort like that?
yeah, I think it's funny because the way that you talk with the administrators, you always have to pitch it along the lines of, "Hey, look at this really cool thing that we're doing, but if you helped out, it could be even better." Because I think that in the early days, we were going to the administrators and we were saying, "Hey, look at this cool thing," and they were like, "Cool, we don't have to do anything." It
Right.
exists, we don't have to support it. But we really started hitting some walls when it came to funding for events, when it came to wanting to run really large scale 800, 900, 1000 person events. That wasn't practical from a student perspective. Um, and and so we started to go to the university. I would say uh, the problem, and I think a lot of universities and student clubs will feel this, is unfortunately a lot of the varsity programs and supported organizations don't garner that support because of a student. They usually garner that support because of a faculty member, because of there's somebody in the administration who recognized the importance and is willing to fight for them. And there is a barrier between a lot of these administrators and the students, and that they just don't trust them. And we've seen that with uh, a lot of these administrators trusting the outside consultants than the students who are directly running their communities. And so we we went to our university and we said, "Hey, we have this thing. We really would like you to support it." And I think that we have a lot of people who think it's really cool and want to continue to look at it over the course of the next few years. But there hasn't been really a single person in the administration who was like, "Let's do it. Let's create an esports program, or let's support this community more and more and more. Let's give them even a venue on campus." The biggest thing that we've struggled with is we're one of the largest gaming communities in the country, and we don't even have the space on campus.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what I was wondering because yeah, Boulder they that's what I was said it's one of the more prominent ones because yeah, I see you guys everywhere. You guys are huge from my understanding,
mhm.
and you just said the Discord had over 2,000 people, so that's a relatively large community. Even if half of those are from the campus, then that's a huge community.
Yeah, and I think that it's two things there. It's really frustrating, and I think that a lot of the staff members feel that frustration. A lot of the staff members, a lot of the esports teams feel that frustration. Is they see how big we are, they see how important we are to so many students, and they just get constantly frustrated at our university. But also, I think that it's really nice to be able to show other organizations that you can be as successful as we are without even having the university really, giving you significant support. Rutgers is a great example of a club. I mentioned them before, but it was in the similar scenario. They recently just got an esports lab on campus, I think last year, but they were very similar, and they grew a very large community, and it was purely just student run. And I think we're hoping to get to the point that basically we're that tipping point that the university starts to care and starts to want to put support into it. And, talking with athletic directors, talking with chancellors and people on the campus, it seems like we're getting to that point. And I think actually, if there's any, you were saying earlier, light at the end of the tunnel with this whole pandemic, esports is having its day in the limelight. And I
Yeah,
think that coming back to the university in fall, I do think that there will be uh, more people wanting to talk to our organization. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, we have existed now for 4-ish years. without any really school support. So it's been an interesting ride.
That's quite amazing. That's like a huge compliment. That's like a really huge, well, I guess compliment to your resume. That's a huge accomplishment in general. What got you going to the point where you realized that this was going to be huge? I mean, obviously you had people that were interested in the club, but I mean, 2,000 is that's a lot. Boulder is one of the largest ones that I've encountered. What got to the
Yeah.
point where you realized, wow, this is a lot bigger than I thought it would be, and what kind of challenges came with that? Because once you start growing and growing and growing like that, they bring their own challenges. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I think a lot of club leaders will sympathize with this, is realizing that you can't do everything yourself. For the first year and a half to 2 years, it really was just me. I had a few members of staff who were really helping out, but I was spending a good 40 hours a week on the organization and or more. And it really took a toll not only on my mental health, but also I wasn't able to complete any significant side projects, and also took a pretty big hit on my grades. And so the first thing that I did going into my junior year was just revamping the entire organization so that all the responsibility didn't fall on me. And so I think that was the biggest challenge to begin with. But I think the moment that I realized that it was going to be bigger than I expected it to be was we every single year we have two big events, and they're called Press Start in the fall and then Continue in the spring. And sophomore year, that was 2017. We held Press Start, and we put a bunch of effort into it. It really, I do have an amazing staff who put in a lot of work. And I think back then, I had put in quite an amount of work for that event, but we had 300 people show up, and that was the biggest event that I had ever run. And I think that was the moment that I realized, like, holy shit. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to
You're
curse, but
totally fine. I'm a sailor sometimes, so you're totally fine.
okay. I was like, holy shit. This is something that people actually care about. And I think I had so many people message me, or I'd walk across campus and somebody would recognize me and tell me how important the event was for them, or how they met a friend at the event. And I think that that uh it made me realize how important it was. Just being able to connect those people. I think the biggest statistic that I like to share to most organizations is 80% of freshmen feel homesick the first couple weeks of school. And schools care a lot about that statistic because they want to be able to keep those students and make sure that they feel at home. And I think that you have an entire generation of people who, if there wasn't something like this, they would just be going to class and then coming home, doing homework, and then playing games. They're not meeting people, they're not socializing, they're not having fun, on the campus, and they're not a part of the school. And I think that that's the amazing thing that a community like this can do, is it really adds to the overall college experience in a way that I think universities are really starting to recognize these days. So, yeah.
No, I highly agree, and that's. I mean, I think. I mean, I'm not even on the campuses, and I've met a lot of my friends just through collegiate esports. So, I mean, I can only imagine if you're actually going there and you see this whole group of people that are have like interests like you, that it must mean a lot. And yeah, it's you start getting friends like through that, and then the community grows, and now all of a sudden you are part of the community. So yeah, no, I see exactly what you mean. Yeah, I want to go back to what you mentioned, how you're not able to get any of those side projects done, but now you do have all the staff in place. And you're technically not president, though. I'm sure you do still have quite a bit of responsibilities going on that are probably outside of just the director of partnerships. But now that you do have that staff, that infrastructure built, what kind of side projects have you been like being able to accomplish? If you don't mind you don't mind talking about some of them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Tespa is definitely one at the helm, which is something I assume that we're going to talk about. But
Yes.
I being able to be a chapter coordinator for Tespa has been really awesome, because it meant that I'm able to turn my success when it comes to being a chapter leader into theirs, in terms of the chapters that I oversee. And working with Tespa and Blizzard and the related sponsors and partners has been a really amazing experience and taught me quite a bit. Outside of that, I've done a lot of stuff with DreamHack. Been running I've been part of the main stage team now for about 3 years, which just means attending every single DreamHack and working on stages that are being seen by tens of thousands of people, which has been a really exciting experience for me. Live event production is something that I've always really loved. Way back in 2018, my friend Sam Morris and I started the Pacific Alliance of Collegiate Gamers, which was a Pac-12 inspired tournament.
Yeah, I remember
Uh,
that. Yeah, I was really
yeah,
excited when that came to fruition.
yeah, it was a really cool project that him and I worked on, and I think it really kick-started a lot of discussion around esports within the Pac-12. We haven't seen conference level support, but I believe 10 out of the 12 now have either a varsity program or a sport club, with Boulder being one that does not. Um,
Wow.
but it really pushed, I think, the needle on Pac-12 esports and a lot of those schools wanting to get involved. And then outside of that, it's really just been, I think any club leader will tell you that, or anybody in the esports industry, is you spend more time thinking about games than you actually do playing games. And so that has been something that has been nice, is being able to play more games, being able to work. I One of the things that actually a lot of people don't know is I directly managed the League of Legends team at CU for 4 years now, which is something that I also was really I love managing that team and that group of guys, and being able to do that, and spend more time with them, and helping them become better players and better people is something that I really enjoyed doing. So
Is
yeah,
that
those are yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, is that something you thought about pursuing a little bit more now that you have a little bit more free time, or I won't even say free time, but less, I guess, you know, keeping everything in check by yourself? Is that something you want to try to get back into? Is the management and possibly coaching?
Yeah, not so much coaching. I think that I'll leave that to the people who are actually good at the game. But I do think a team of players really requires somebody to help them with the logistics, help them with decision making, and resolving conflict. And I think a lot of collegiate teams struggle with those things. Scheduling scheduling scrims is one of the hardest things just in general. And that those are the things that I've been helping out with. In terms of professionally, I don't see me chasing that as a career. I think that the current esports landscape is good, but it isn't something that I want to directly go into right now. So, but I really loved working with those guys over the past 2 years, doing travel, scrimmages and VOD reviews and things like that. So I
But
value that time.
before we get into how you came about with Tespa and your work in Tespa, since you have worn so many different hats and you do quite a bit, I mean, what as Jack at post Boulder is looking into, like what is your concern for the future as far as what you're going to get into? I mean, you've been an event organizer, obviously the production side of everything, a manager. Obviously, you formed the entire chapter of Boulder essentially, and not and also helped out with the Pac-12. You're a director of partnerships. That's a lot of different directions you can go. Is there one that you think you want to kind of focus on, or do you just kind of try to stay as broad as possible and just do whatever comes your way?
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with the idea of being a jack of all trades. Pardon the pun, but I think I personally do think it's a very good thing to be being able to try out many different skills, many different positions, many different opportunities, because you figure out truly what you're good at, and you figure out what you're not good at, and that allows you to have a better view of the many paths available to you. My degree that I got from the university is a strategic communications degree, which is based in public relations. And so, if I wanted to go directly into a public relations firm or an agency, that's something that I have the opportunity to do so, or working in house for any company, whether it be gaming or otherwise. And so, public relations and I think community management, crisis communications, is something that I love, and is something that um, I think that honestly gaming and esports kind of struggles with. I think that there have been a lot of PR disasters over the past few years, um, in the gaming industry, and I think that's something that I would love to see if I can have a hand in over the course of the next few years. Past that, I still love doing live events. I think that live events really bring out a lot of energy in the people who work on them, but I do think that I have a professor of mine who did um, she did weddings for 20 years, and she said that uh, the number one thing with live events is you need to understand that if you want to do live events right now, you need to consider if you're going to want to be doing live events in 10 years, because live events take a lot of work, both mental and physical. And if that's not something that you think you're going to be able to handle, 10, 20, 30 years from now, that may not be a profession that you want to go into. And so I don't know if I want to do live events all the time, but it is something that I love. I was able to work at BlizzCon last year, which was an amazing experience. And massive conventions like that, and the energy that is um provoked from the fans in those environments is electrifying. And so but who knows, I think that I'm kind of exploring my opportunities right now, I've always said that you should have a destination in mind, but you never should really be scared to go off the path, because you never know where that path is going to lead. And I think many people who are 10, 20 years into their careers will say the same thing, is they're doing something that maybe they didn't consider to be that they might be doing 10 years ago. So I'm open to things, and I think I think that's something that can be valuable to my future. So yeah.
I definitely agree. No, and this is just from personal experience with you on Twitter, and it's just like I do follow you. I see your tweets, and I see as far as like you going into PR, and yeah, teams. So there's at least one bad PR situation in an organization or a team or anything like that a year. And like I've seen the kind of person you are, and yeah, they could use an open mind, like a more modern mind frame, because there are sometimes where even companies, when they apologize, they just don't know how to apologize or what they're really apologizing for. I've noticed that, and I'm not gonna bash on Riot, but even they've been guilty of that every now and then. But as far as like the kind of person I've seen you are, I think that'd be. I mean, obviously, I think the esports world needs more minds like yours that think the way you do. That, like I said, have a more modernized way of communicating, because there's a lot of stuff that's still kind of like hit or miss with the way wording is, and I don't feel like it's that hard, but I guess some people just I guess some corporations, they're not raised to believe or like think that way.
Yeah, to defend some communication teams out there, it can be extremely difficult. Some of the big things that you may be thinking about happened because the chain of communication is too long, and basically
Yeah,
when a message should have gone out apologizing for something, unfortunately, it took maybe a few hours or a few days, and it seemed late. But it's just because that's how organizations work. Crisis communications, which is kind of that field of, oh my god, something is happening and we have to react to it, is super interesting. And it's hard because you have to have you have to not only have initiative to be able to immediately communicate when something bad happens, um, but also understand that everything that you're saying is going to be seen and is going to be attacked and is going to be analyzed. And I think that the failings of some of those companies is just because they either take too long, or it's usually because they take too long, and they don't know what they want to say, and they don't know how to handle it. And I think sometimes it really just takes somebody at the helm to push things forward. I will say, for all of the maybe bad examples of PR that Riot has had, they also have had some tremendous ones. And I think that PR is very similar to graphic design, where when PR is good, you should not notice it. You shouldn't be like, oh wow, that was a great press release, or that was great communication on that. But when it's bad, you sure do notice it. Um, and I will give a lot of credit to Riot, and Blizzard, and quite a few others. Actually, Team Liquid, with their team not qualifying to playoffs this past
Oh
weekend.
yeah, they said it. They posted immediately when that happened, right?
They've been doing a tremendous job on communicating to fans, taking credit. And it's somebody who's, it's a social media person who's typing those things, but they're doing a really great job because they're representing the organization.
Correct. Yeah.
And I really like the way that they're handling it, because have seen a lot of teams just, they don't qualify and then they just go quiet for 4 days, and it's just not the way that you really should be cultivating a fan base. So
Very true. So yeah, I think the whole point of that is that you got a lot of promise in your future. So I look forward to whatever you do, man.
hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully.
So, but we're here now. What got you into going to Tespa? I mean, it seems like an ignorant question because obviously, like Boulder, Tespa, Collegiate, going in from one to the other, a little bit more of a broad spectrum for the for Tespa. But what got you into Tespa, and how are you enjoying that right now?
Yeah, I obviously Boulder was a TESPA chapter when I joined, which and then the people who were part of that organization didn't want to do the responsibility, so I just suddenly became responsible for everything related to TESPA for the organization. Um and so I got I became part of that community. And the thing that and this is me saying this, the thing that I really really love about TESPA is that network, is being able to meet collegiate leaders from across the US and talk through the problems that we're having, or just play games and things like that. And so after being a part of that community for a couple of years, I was invited out to the TESPA retreat in 2018, which was a fantastic experience, which is a program that TESPA does where they bring out collegiate leaders to the Blizzard campus, and they talk through the future of collegiate, and give them career advice, and do workshops and things like that, and a lot of networking as well. And I think um, it's so different to meet somebody in person and interact with somebody in person, compared to just talking with them online.
Oh yeah.
And being at that event, meeting all of these people who I had been talking to for years, and spending time with them, whether it was just in a workshop, or grabbing dinner, or grabbing drinks or anything along those lines. It was amazing, and it really pushed me to wanting to give back to that organization and give back to that community. So the moment that I saw the community coordinator applications open up, I knew I immediately had to apply, which was pretty it was pretty nerve wracking, but I was able to get to the position after quite a series of interviews. And I was onboarded with a really fantastic group of individuals, who make up this year's class of community coordinators, who are overseeing all of the chapters. And it it's been amazing. It's been everything that I hoped that it would be, not only in the sense of uh being able to help as many chapter leaders as possible, but also having control over any projects that I want to be able to work on, or things that I can help build my portfolio. So yeah, I think that TESPA can be a what's the word that I want to use? Maybe contentious um, entity in the collegiate esports and collegiate gaming community. But I think that Tespa does a lot of good for maybe the thing. And again, this is my own personal opinion.
Sure. Sure.
Tespa does a lot of good. And I think that Tespa has been around for quite a long time now compared to some of these other entities. And you know, with what I've seen, the future and the both what has been shared and what hasn't been shared, the future of Tespa is really bright, and I think that it is going to continue to be a player in this scene, over the course of the next few years. And I think that it's going to be a really important player, and I think that any of the chapters involved will just continue to see benefits and continue to see growth, both within the network and the program overall.
Well, that actually leads decently well to my next question because you were in a unique position. That I mean, that you have so much of this experience from collegiate over to just the um, just from Boulder side over to Tespa, where it is a little bit more wider of a net that you can get a cast and you get to talk to people, you get a different perspectives and things like that. And you said that Tespa itself has a pretty bright future, but I want your opinion on collegiate in general. What do you see collegiate in the future right now? Because I feel like it's such a slow burn. Every year there's like, oh, it's gonna get bigger next year, and it usually is. But at the same time, I feel like I don't know if I sometimes have trouble seeing where collegiate is really going, because there are some instances where like NCAA is talked about, but then it's not, and I would like your opinion on all of it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to say is collegiate is bigger than you think that it is, and that isn't necessarily a good thing. To explain that, I think that you know the best way to explain it is universities are machines, and they are these massive slow moving machines, and collegiate is slowly becoming that. There are so many different entities, so many different people, so many different schools, so many different projects, organizations, all these different things that are now focused in on collegiate esports and collegiate gaming communities. And the reason it seems like it's moving so slow is because there's so many people involved. There's so many different things happening. But it isn't, going to be, and I think that the dream was, for example, what your opinion is on this or not. The NCAA steps in, the dominoes fall over, and suddenly every school has a varsity esports program. That isn't going to happen in a year. Um, Collegiate football has 100+ years of history, and in those early years it was just guys playing on a field, and then suddenly they were like, oh, we could play the university close to us, and that slowly developed into local regional conferences, and then it grew bigger and bigger and bigger into what we know today. And I think esports has to go through the same thing. It's going to have growing pains, it's going to have problems, there's going to be arguments, there's going to be uh, you know, organizations that are founded and do a really great job and then die. The PAC-G is a great example. Is we did what we wanted to do, and then we realized that we made our mark and we didn't need to move forward. And I think that for all of maybe the frustration that some people have about the scene in terms of its growth, there is a lot of growth. And I think it's slow moving because the foundation needs to exist. Some of the things that are being done at these larger schools, whether it be UCI or Ohio State, University of Utah, uh, there's a lot of stuff being done behind the scenes. Riots, RSAA is a great example. Those things take time, and maybe they don't have as much as an impact as you would want them to have immediately. They will, and we just have to wait, and we have to give it some time um, to grow. Um, so yeah, I think that's my general opinion, is that things are going to be slow moving, but they will get there.
Okay.
Um, do think that universities, 'cause the way that I do like to talk about this, and I think the way that Tespa talks about it, is separating esports from community. I think universities are going to slowly start to realize that the gaming community on their campus is more important than they think that it is. And I think that we will see a lot more uh, gaming community centers. We'll see more significant support, bigger events, and I think more embrace of gaming as a medium and as an activity on universities. And I think that once we start to see that at the community level, we'll start seeing it in the academic and career level, whether it is research being done about gaming and esports, or it is classes actually being taught. There are game design classes right now, and I think that those will slowly start to grow. But I think that we're seeing, esports degrees. I think Boise State has esports production classes. Those are really
Yeah.
exciting initiatives being started by universities, and the more of that we'll see, I think the more that gaming and esports becomes part of the traditional conversation when it comes to college.
When you were talking about Riot, I also want to talk about that too, because Tespa, obviously, they have a different approach than Riot. Just in general, Riot So since we're not getting into the NCAA time era of esports, and who knows if we will, I'm definitely not going to debate that because I have learned that's an endless conversation. But
It is.
Riot and Tespa and all these companies with their own games are taking control of their own divisions and own their own everything. Obviously, that makes sense. They're the developers; they want to have control over it. What do you think that Tespa and Riot do that are different, that they could learn from each other?
Yeah, I think that and again, just as a disclaimer, this is my own opinion.
Sure.
I think Riot has done a really great job creating a tournament, creating a narrative, creating. I think the RSA is fantastic, and I think a lot of people really buy into CLOL as a tournament. In some of those amateur servers, people are constantly talking about the bracket structure and how things are changing year over year, and of course it's been suspended for the remainder of the year. But I think that Riot has done a tremendous job creating a singular tournament that so many groups are involved in, and it really has set a really high bar for what a collegiate esports tournament should look like. Um, on the flip side, I think that's something that Riot has constantly struggled with, that Tespa hasn't, is supporting the local groups and supporting the scenes on the campus. Tespa is split into the two sides, the compete and community. And the community aspect of it is supporting those leaders and supporting the organizations on campus and their communities. Riot used to have something like that, and every once in a while they'll send out a box for their world's viewing parties or something along those lines. But they are purely focused on the esports side, and I think honestly it's a little bit naive. I think there's a lot of value in the communities on these campus, and Riot sometimes does support events, usually local to the LA area. But I think that a what they could learn from each other is Riot could learn to support the community better, and I think that Tespa could learn about narrative creation. I also think that the RSAA as an independent board, separate away from the publisher that is able to make decisions, is a genius move, and something that more publishers, not only Blizzard, but also other publishers should follow in suit.
All right. I got one more tough question for you. You've done
Okay.
really good. I really appreciate these answers because I know we went through general topics beforehand. I told you there may be some deviations. I feel like I've almost deviated all the time. I'm very sorry about that.
It's okay.
But you have a very distinct insight that I feel like it'd be a tragedy if I didn't ask some of the things that I wanted to. So, uh, yeah, I think this might be my deviations may happen, but might be the last one. So Riot came out with their new ruling on tournament restrictions, and you having again the unique perspective of not only forming a club that competes in tournaments, but also forming your own tournament. How do you think that's going to affect the landscape of collegiate League of Legends now that they're not going to have as big of the tournaments outside of CLOL, but now you can for what it looks like you can do more confined tournaments as long as they keep
Yeah.
it underneath a certain amount.
Yeah, I think that one, talking to Sherman and Tiza, who I will say, to start off with, the moment that they put those things out, they both received, or the entire team received, more hate than I think was deserved. Um, that entire team cares more about collegiate than a lot of people that I've met in this industry, and I think that uh, they immediately wanted to talk with members of the community to see how they could rectify some of the complaints that were had. Um, so I know that those guidelines aren't finalized, and I think that moving into the fall, we'll probably see a final version.
And I think Sherman has come out and said, we will work with you if you
Yeah,
just
and
reach out to us because they don't know if they're not reached out to.
I think that's the thing. I think that they are more guidelines than they are rules. I think that from the publisher perspective, which I think may be hard for some people to understand, the publishers have a have intellectual property, and they want to be able to protect that. And the intellectual property of, that Riot owns is CLOL, and CLOL is very valuable to them. And the last thing that they want is somebody to create a competitor using League of Legends that draws away from the overall competitiveness, integrity, and the importance of CLOL in the collegiate esports narrative. And so I understand where they're coming from. I do think that maybe the guidelines were a little bit heavy-handed in terms of shutting down like intramural leagues that are happening on college campuses. Because that really sucks. Like that's something that, I when I was at Boulder, we founded Buffalo, which is literally just 12 gold level teams that compete week to week, and we do an LCS style tournament. That wouldn't be possible without with these guidelines being in place. I also think the shutdown of the community support program that they had, which was the or the tournament support program that they had, which was the like RP prizing thing.
Yeah, where you get like a Professor Rise for a prize and all that.
Yeah, that's been a thing for
Years.
yeah, probably 8 years now,
Yeah.
and it does kind of suck. I think that it would be really nice if they recognized that the removal of that program hurts some chapter or some schools, and maybe launch an alternative or a replacement, or at least say that they're looking into something. um but I think overall the move is understandable. It isn't a move that is unique. Obviously the Overwatch, Hearthstone licenses are very kept close to the chest by Blizzard, and to be able to run one of those tournaments, you have to directly talk to uh, Blizzard about using those licenses. Um, but I do think that over the course of the next few months, now that we're all in quarantine, I think that does give the CLOL team some time to figure out how they want to communicate those guidelines moving forward. I don't think it's a bad move. I think it's an understandable move. We'll just have to see what happens over the course of the next few months.
Yeah, it's interesting with esports because the developers are the ones who created the game. Because if you go to NFL or the NCAA football or basketball, I mean, you can trace back who obviously who may have started the game, and some of it's even hearsay. But nowadays, when you look at League of Legends, oh, you know who developed it? It's Riot. They own it. That's how it is. So therefore, they should have control over it. They have a very unique perspective, and they're venturing into territory. And I don't think people really respect this. They're venturing into territory that no one has ever ventured into. That they have a game that is played in the collegiate level, and they own it. They legitimately own it. Like take NFL. NFL doesn't technically own football. They own the NFL, the league, because there's also the XFL, the the Canadian Football League as well.
Yeah, I do think, and this is kind of my own personal hope when it comes to collegiate esports. I do hope that one day there is a tipping point that the schools themselves have an amount of power over it. A good example is if the Pac-12 dropped football, for example, that would be big news, because it isn't that football would take a big hit. It's that a lot of people really like the Pac-12 schools, and that adds, a lot of viewership to collegiate football. If collegiate esports moving forward, had all of the schools involved, I think it would be very easy for maybe the top schools that have the most viewership, that are bringing in the most money, to have some sort of leverage. We aren't at that point yet. Nobody really cares if a university decides, oh, we're just not going to do League of Legends. But hopefully one day, I do think that the publishers will have, hopefully, some of the power will be taken away from the publishers. I also think that the publishers are in a unique stance, but I also think they understand that they are in a unique position, and they are willing to give up some of that power. The RSA is a great example, for the greater good of the scene. Uh, and I think that the RSA is a really great move because it shows that Riot cares about the future of the scene. And I hope that other publishers follow in suit.
I was ecstatic when they announced it because not only did they announce it with their actual infrastructure, and they announced all the the board, everyone on the board, which I made a video of it whenever it came out. So I haven't watched it in a while, so I actually don't remember who's on the board. I know Kirk Melcher, and I believe AJ from, was it University of Utah? I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's quite a few people on that board.
There are. And
they are all great people who
Yeah.
care about the scene, and I trust all of those people to make the right decision.
Yeah, the names that I recognize, I definitely trust, and I obviously the names I don't know, I can't absolutely trust, but I would put money on them being decently trustworthy if they're within the echelons of the people that I already respect. Like I said, like AJ, Kurt Melcher. Kurt Melcher has been doing this for, he was the first scholarship
a
program.
long time. Yeah.
Yeah. So not only that, they put guides for, almost like I don't want to say an HR program because I feel like that devalues it, but they did put in guidelines for any sort of discrimination and things like that. And they have, I believe her online handle is Roulette. I don't remember her actual name. Her online handle is Roulette, and she's heading it up with her organization. And I was ecstatic because that was right after the scandal with Riot, and I was extremely ecstatic to see that that there are going to be guidelines in Collegiate, because the last thing I want to do is, like, obviously I don't want to see any issue anywhere like that sort of thing, but in Collegiate, that would break my heart. So I'm really glad that the RSAA was established, because they look like they are taking infrastructure very seriously, and again have accountability amongst each other, which I think is extremely important.
Yeah, I think that the future is bright, and I think that the steps that are being taken right now are the correct steps. But I do think that it's probably going to take more time than most people realize.
Yeah, and that's again, it's unventured territory that has to be expected at this point. But that's a good note to leave on. Jack, thank you so much. Was there any other shout outs, any other topics that you wanted to talk about? Do you want to ask any questions of yourself or anything like that?
No, I think that the thing that I'll shout out is the career aspect. I think that a lot of universities really don't value it as much as they should. A lot of people want to go into gaming and esports, and universities as well as student organizations should take the initiative to help those people get there, whether it be through workshops or networking. And so, if there's anything that maybe you can take away from this, it is maybe think about how you are helping your organization, transition people into the workforce, and see how you can best help them be prepared. So, yeah.
Fantastic closing words. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate your time, and these were very, like you said, so I knew a little bit of this about you. I didn't know everything. I'm really glad we got to sit down and talk about that, because I learned a lot about you, and obviously you have a pretty bright future, and I look forward to seeing what you do in the collegiate field and influencing it. I'm being serious. This is actually, I wish that I respect, obviously, like, collegiate's I love collegiate esports so much. So, seeing someone that's as, well, I won't say as passionate, I don't want to insult you, but a little bit, even maybe, going and putting everything into it. I appreciate that. So yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here for the collegiate system, everything. Thanks for everything you do, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you as well, Joshua. And until next time, I guess.
Until next time, have a good one, man.
Yeah, you too, man.
That was Jack, Verttex, University of Colorado Boulder. Extremely insightful dude. Like I said, very ambitious. I have ambitious people on here, and I feel like I need to learn from them, because I have a lot of ideas in my brain. I mean, obviously my brain is like constantly working, but man, the amount of work everyone puts in compared to me, it's just like, what am I doing? I should really be doing a bit more. But Jax is one of those guys that makes me feel that way, because obviously he started one of the largest student-run organizations for esports collegiate esports, I should say, in North America. So. And he's doing Tespa as well. So yeah, he's got a lot of things going on, and that's admirable. So I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. A little bit less ignorant about Tespa. That's one of my joys of bringing guests on here, because I'm just ignorant to a lot of things in collegiate, because I tunnel vision League of Legends so much that I don't know much about Tespa. I don't know much about Valve. That's why I have these guests on. I don't know much about the behind the scenes things that some of the teams, some of the organizations go through. That's why I like having people on. Speaking of that, I said in the intro, my next three guests are going to be some of the most, some of the most insightful. Jack being one of them. My next one is going to be Jaws from, he's the founder of Collegiate League of Legends. He is the one who started Collegiate League of Legends, what is CLOL today. So I have him on this Friday. I've already recorded it. It's extraordinarily insightful. I'm so grateful he was on. So have him Friday. Monday, I have JT Vandenbree. Tiza, he is the current manager of the Collegiate League of Legends program over at Riot. So I have Jaws Friday, and then I have his successor Monday. I'm recording that one today. I'm so grateful for having him on. So I hope you give it a listen. Should be good. Other than that, my name is Joshua Fequez Quest. You can follow me at Twitter at twitter.com/Fequez, P-H-E-Q-E-S. I almost forgot my own Twitter there for a second. It's going to be in the description below, no matter. So is Jack Verttex, so go check him out as well. And other than that, stay healthy, stay safe. I'll be tweeting out when this Friday, whenever the podcast with Jaws drops. That's going to be great. And then I'm going to wrap it up next Monday with Tiza, and that'll be it for the season. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I know I have. And I'll be back. I'll be back another time. I'm going to be working on other things until the lockdown, I guess expires. Until lockdown ends, I guess is the technical, the better term. But so this episode and the next two are going to be my last 3 episodes for this season for the podcast. And again, hope you enjoyed it. Other than that, I feel like I'm rambling at this point. So once again, stay healthy, stay safe, wash your hands. I'll talk to you Friday.